Welcome to the Onion Buns. Let's talk about my top 20 games of all times. But before I get to that, if you like the content I make, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the channel, and any help you can give me by liking and subscribing my videos would be greatly appreciated. And if you do like the videos, please share them. Easiest way to get word out there is to get eyes on the product. It's just simple marketing. So any help anyone watching could give me, that would be greatly appreciated. All right. So I guess I should start with once again admitting my personal bias on the topic. When I created this channel, I promised myself that I would be transparent and upfront if I had any form of bias on any topic, be it politics, gaming, rescues, whatever. I find too many media outlets, especially nowadays, they don't have any transparency. They don't admit their bias. They try to manipulate you into thinking what they want to think. I'm not going to do that. I am an RPG fan, first and foremost. So on my list, you're not going to see games like Halo, Counter-Strike, any first-person shooters or battle royals. They're just not my game. I'm not bad-mouthing those games. They're just not my personal cup of tea, that's all. To each their own. I prefer RPGs and turn-based strategy games. Also, I'm going to leave MMORPGs off my rankings. I do plan to do a separate video or 10 on the different MMORPGs I've played over the years, alpha tested, beta tested, or just played them over many, many years. Starting all the way back into 1999 with the original Neverwinter Nights on AOL. But as I said, that's for a different video. Last of the disclaimers. I'm not going to do a super deep dive into each title I name. I'll talk about what I liked and what made the games different and stand out to me personally. But I'm not going to dissect each game. It's my honest hope that anyone watching these videos might feel a tug or pull to try the games themselves. And I would honestly hate to spoil that for anyone. So with all that said, let's get started on number 20 to number 16 in this video. Coming in at number 20 is a game I'm fairly sure the mass majority of people have never heard of. Knights of Legend by Origin Systems in 1989 for the Commodore 64 system. Graphically, the game was nothing to write home about. Not even back then in 1989. It wasn't cutting any new edges or anything for graphics. But it had the most fantastic level up system I've ever seen in an RPG. At the time, and honestly, even by today's standards. Rather than just collecting enough XP to level up, which we do nowadays for most games, you would get your XP and then you'd have to make your way to the arena. And in the arena, you would fight 1, 2, or 4 opponents. If you win, you gained your level. If you lost, you don't want to lose. It remains the most difficult advancement system I've ever played in an RPG. Bar none. Now, normally I don't worry about hard mode, hardcore, all that stuff. That's not my style of game. I play games on the normal setting. You know, the games are made, in my opinion, games are made at the normal setting. So you play the game at the normal setting. But this level up system was so unique, it holds a special place in my memory. Is it nostalgia? Possibly. All I can say is people should give it a try for themselves. Sadly, the game is not available on GOG or Steam. So you can only find it in emulators. If GOG ever put this title into their good old games catalog, I'd buy it just like that, instantly. I'd totally repurchase it. I love this game. Side note here, I only buy these games, these old games, from GOG, not from Steam. I find GOG goes that extra mile to make sure the games work. I buy my new games from Steam only. I don't want to badmouth GOG, but I have some issues with their policies for the new games. I just ran into it with Cyberpunk. I wasn't happy. So, but if the game is from 2000 or before, I always buy it from GOG because GOG, as I said, they take that extra step to make sure that game is running on our computers, our modern day computers. And if you ever played some of those older games with runtime, you don't want them running on a modern day computer unless it's been properly optimized to run. I played a game called Pirates, and I got a hold of it and I plugged it in, and this would have been probably a Pentium 1 or 2, I forget. It was a while ago. I still had a CD drive, and I plugged the game in and I loaded up and I got my ship. My ship's right here, and I couldn't even, the pirate was like going like this around my ship, blowing me up, and I couldn't even see him. It was the runtime. So yeah, for the old games, I buy them on the GOG, and for the new games, I buy them on Steam. That's just my own personal opinion on the matter. You can take it or leave it if you will. But anyway, yeah, that's my number 20 game, Knights of Legend, from Origin Systems from 1989. Alrighty, so that brings us to number 19, the original Might and Magic game. It's probably the hardest RPG I've ever played in my life, from then to now. Like, this game was very unforgiving. You started in a tavern or an inn, and you would go out and you know, standard stuff. You would explore and make your way outside and explore outside. But death was permanent. So you would roll up, I believe it was 5 or 6 characters for your party, and you could only save in the tavern or the inn. You couldn't save when you were outside. You had to, when you wanted to save, you had to run all the way back and save in the inn. It was very tedious, but we didn't know any better at the time. So yeah, it was really, really tough. But one of the things that I loved about this game is back then we were playing, like, you know, your average game maybe had 2, maybe 3 floppy 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. So you weren't dealing with a lot of data. And this game was massive for its time. Like, it was huge. And you would go out, and I want to say I probably spent 200 to 300 hours mapping this game and playing this game from start to finish. And that was unheard of back then. So I have a really soft spot for this game, and that's why it's number 19. Now, I want to talk about mapping. Nowadays, modern players don't know about mapping from back then. When I say mapping, what I mean is you had a pad of graph paper, you had a pencil, and you had an eraser. And typically these games were a 15 by 15 square. So 15 squares, and that was your zone, so to speak. And you would start mapping every single square. The secret door here, pathway here, solid wall here. And yeah, so it was, the mapping was a part of the game back then. Nowadays, you just go on the internet, you type in a few words, and you download all the maps, and you're done. But we didn't have the internet back then. So mapping was super important to be able to play the game because, as I said, this game was massive for its era. So it was easy to forget what you had to do to get, especially since you had to get back to the inn to save at the end of the night. You couldn't just save out in the wild. So yeah, I really enjoyed this game. I played the hell out of it. I did try to replay it. I bought it off of GOG, and yeah, it was even too tough for me nowadays. I guess I've been conditioned by the modern games that I just couldn't. I've always laughed. I would pay real money to see modern day, like say 25-year-olds and younger, try to play the original Might and Magic or the SSI Gold Box games from scratch. No mods, no cheats or anything. Just load them in and play them legitly. I would love to watch that because I guarantee you they would be just pulling their hair out and screaming bloody murder, complaining, how the hell did you ever play this game? So anyway, yeah, it's I don't really have a lot to go into the game about. It was I loved it. It was a fun game. You can buy it on GOG right now, dirt cheap, give it a try. You can get all of the Might and Magic games, all of the RPGs. I'm talking the RPGs, not the Heroes of Might and Magic, but the actual RPGs. They're actually really well done for their eras. So, yeah, give them a try and, yep. Alrighty, we're at number 18. For number 18, I'm going to combine a number of games rather than just one game, and I'll explain why. But that's the SSI AD&D Gold Box games. The games I'm specifically speaking about are Pool of Radiance from 1988, Curse of the Azure Bonds from 1989, Secret of the Silver Blades from 1990, Pools of Darkness from 1991, Gateway to the Savage Frontier from 1991, Treasures of the Savage Frontier from 1992, Champions of Krynn from 1990, Death Knight of Krynn from 1991, The Dark Queen of Krynn from 1992, and Forgotten Realms Unlimited Adventures from 1993. And of course, the original Neverwinter Nights on AOL it ran from 1991 to 1997. But it was the first MMORPG, and as I said, I'm going to discuss MMORPGs in a different video. There was another title in this string of masterpieces. Like, these games are absolute masterpieces, in my opinion. And then there was Hillsfar. If you've watched my other videos, you've seen me say, fuck you to Andromeda. Well, Hillsfar is the original Andromeda. So what Andromeda was to Mass Effect, or what Dragon Age Veilguard was to the Dragon Age series, that's what Hillsfar was to the SSI AD&D Gold Box games. So the reason I'm lumping them all together is because they're all basically the same game. Oh, sure, they got the stories change, the environments change, the Krynn games have a different class than the other games. But at the core, they are the same game. But that game is fantastic. Like, that system is absolutely amazing. What it was, so like at number 19, I talked about Might and Magic. Might and Magic, you made your 6 characters, and you moved 1 square at a time. It was like a turn-based first-person shooter, where you moved 1 square, 1 square, 1 square, but you were moving your whole party. Well, you do that with the AD&D games as well, except for one key component, is when you enter combat, it shifted from that to a battle map, top down. And you would move each individual character, you know, and you had to deal with encumbrance. You had to deal, like, dwarves moved less distance than elves and everything like that. So the combat was far more strategic than anything we had seen prior to these games. And I'll go on a limb saying this, the combat in the SSI AD&D games are still more strategic than a lot of modern games. There's a lot of moving parts you need to understand, even though these are EGA graphics. So graphically, it was nice at the time, but they don't stand up nowadays, obviously. But that battle map, that really was a difference maker, because like, a good example would be a lightning bolt. You cast a lightning bolt. Well, you target your opponent, it hits the opponent, it goes through the opponent. If there's any more enemies behind the opponent, it goes through them, damaging them. If there's a wall behind, it'll hit the wall and it'll bounce back. Depending on your angle, you actually had to take into account the angle you were shooting at. So you could hit something, go through 4 enemies, bounce off the wall, and do double damage on those 5 enemies coming back. But if you weren't careful, you could hit the wall, it could bounce back, and it could come through you or your party members, damaging you. So there was a lot of strategy and tactics involved in this. And the other aspect of that was the same for fireballs and stink clouds and all of those. But there was also they were combat spells, but they didn't damage, like Dimension Door, Teleport, Mirror Image. Globe of Invulnerability, Lesser and Greater. So all of these were defensive to make you survive a battle longer. And it really added a lot of tactics and strategy to the combat. And the games were masterpieces, absolute masterpieces. You can buy them in bundles on Steam or on GOG. As I said, I always buy the old games on GOG, and GOG came out with the bundles first. I think actually Steam just got the same bundles and is just reselling the same product. So, GOG did all the work. On the forums, we were begging GOG to bring these games into the good old game catalog. So, yeah, you can pick them up, and they're fantastic. And there's a whole bunch of other AD&D games like Ravenloft and Temple Elemental Evil and a whole bunch of other ones. But I'm specifically talking about the SSI Gold Box games, the ones I listed off to you. I really can't strongly suggest enough how much people should try these games. The stories are fantastic. Like, that was the other thing about them. Might and Magic, it was mostly about combat. It had a weak story, and it was the same for the Ultimate games. The Ultimate games early on did not have amazing stories. These games, they had fantastic stories, and it was very descriptive. So yeah, I can't really say much more about it as other than I've played every one of these games. I just finished replaying Pool of Radiance. I've just restarted Curse of the Azarbons, and I've also restarted Champions of Krynn. And I'll go through that whole catalog again. The other thing is I mentioned Unlimited Adventures from 1993. That is you know what Neverwinter Nights was for BioWare, where you designed your own world or your own adventure? That's what Unlimited Adventures were. You designed your own adventures in using the SSI AD&D Gold Box game engine. So like in 93, that was unheard of. That was a massive first, and it was a huge deal. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention about this is the SSI AD&D games, they're built off of the second edition rule set of Dungeons and Dragons, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So every character has a strength, but it has a weakness. Now, I play 5th edition with friends, and I got to be honest, I feel like I'm a god character. Nobody has any weaknesses anymore. Everybody's all powerful, all seeing. And I enjoy playing with my friends and everything, but I miss 2nd edition, because 2nd edition, you weren't a god, and it was a struggle, and there was hardship, and you had to work towards a goal. Like I just finished a tabletop adventure, Avernus, and we had 2 paladins in our group, and it was ridiculous. They were so grossly overpowered, like massively overpowered, that, yeah, like I rolled a warrior, and by about 4th level, I just grabbed a bow and stood in the back and went pew, 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 because there was no way I was matching those guys' damage. Like, it was just so over the top. 2nd edition isn't like that. Even as you got up in levels, you still had vulnerabilities. And I really appreciate that design for that system. So yeah, my number 18 is the entire catalog of the old SSI AD&D Gold Box games by Strategic Simulations. I really strongly suggest, if you've never played them, go to GOG, buy the bundles. They're like $8 or $9, so they're not expensive, but I guarantee you, if you like D&D, you're going to love these games. Alrighty, this brings us to number 17 and 16. At number 17 is Civilization 2 Test of Time. Now, I'm a huge Civilization fan. I love these games, and you're never going to hear me say a bad word about any of these games until they hit Civilization 6. To me, Civilization 6 is the Andromeda, the Hillsfar, the Veilguard of the Civ series. But prior to that, all of these games are absolutely fantastic. Now, some of them are pretty dated now. I recently tried playing Call to Power. I recently tried replaying Call to Power, and it was too dated. But yeah, number 17 is Civilization Test of Time. Now, what made this game stand out from the other ones is you got to choose if you were doing a science fiction or a fantasy campaign. So it wasn't just a real world setting like the original Civ was, or like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are. You actually got to choose, and the fantasy, like, you would go underground. And for the science fiction, you went up into space, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I wish the modern day Civs after number 2 had it continued to incorporate this system in. Otherwise, every Civ game is almost identical to the last one until you hit number 6. Number 6 was a huge departure from what worked prior. So yeah, I loved the Civ games, and I loved being able to pick science fiction or fantasy. It was a fantastic idea. It was a fantastic concept, and it added a new twist to an already magnificent franchise. I really don't have much else to say. It was just an awesome game. And number 16 is another Civ game. It's Civilization 4. Now, Civilization 4 is interesting. If you polled 100 Civ fans, probably about 80 of them would tell you Civ 4 is the best Civ game ever made. I'm not one of those people. Now, obviously, I enjoyed it because it's in my list. And it has way too many DLCs to even begin to try and name. But what Civ 4 had that was so special is you didn't have to fight your opponent to win. You could win through influence, subversion, be it religion or just influence, and cultural influence, and you could start stealing their land from them as your influence grew. And again, just like Civ 2, I wish, in this case, Civ 5 had continued that concept. I love that concept. I played Civ 4 way too much. And yeah, it was just, I can't rave about that concept enough. It was just, you didn't have anything else out there like that. Otherwise, the Civ game is a Civ game. They're all pretty much alike until you get to Civ 6. And that was a good thing. That was a really good thing. So yeah, number 16 is Civilization 4. Again, Civ 2 and 4 can be bought on GOG for sure, and I think Steam carries both of them as well. And again, these are older games, so they're dirt cheap. We're talking $2-3 on a sale. That brings us to the end of the first video, numbers 20 to 16. So number 20 was Knights of Legend. Number 19 was the original Might and Magic. Number 18 was the entire catalog of the SSI AD&D Gold Box games. Number 17 is Civilization 2 Test of Time. And number 16 is Civilization 4. I strongly suggest, these are all older games, obviously, but I strongly suggest if you've never played any of these, pick them up, give them a try. If strategy games or tactical games or RPGs attract you and you don't mind playing dated games, I guarantee you'll love them. So anyway, that brings us to the end. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike. Always feel free to leave a comment. Don't worry, I don't swing my cane too strongly anymore if I dislike your comment. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Bye.